fellow Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to episode 242 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, joined by my co-host, as always, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, braving these May days. Continuing this dead part of the dead period.
Yep.
Pre-training camp, post-draft, and we're talking OTAs out here.
Talking the big OTA word there, and we're actually going to be probably talking about why nothing that happens at OTAs really matters. But I should have probably saved that for 30 minutes into the show. So don't leave. We do have some interesting things to talk about, but overreacting to a couple of practice clips probably not going to be one of them. But I can't speak for my other guests. He is, of course, Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson over at ESPN. Eric, welcome back. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well.
Good to hear it. Yes. Well, we did actually get some roster news, right? So that there is a small amount of news to talk about. We have to hold on to these little breadcrumbs wherever we can, really, because there's no telling how long it'll be until the next roster transaction happens. So we'll get to that with a couple of wide receiver swaps and a surprise retirement. What is this, two years in a row that we've had a surprise retirement in the middle of, I think, May or June? I can't remember exactly when Eddie Goldman was last year. I think it was closer to camp.
I think it was a bit like right before training camp.
Yeah.
Got out there that Georgia sun and was like, no, not for me. But he's back now, so all's forgiven. But yeah, we'll get to some of those wide receiver swaps. Talk a little bit about Jared Bernhardt, and of course, see if we can parse anything from the kickoff of OTAs here, which of course, again, not necessarily the most important of all the off-season stuff, but it is the first time we've really gotten to see all aspects of this team on the field together, where, at rookie minicamp, it was a very limited number of players that were out there. Now, more or less, the whole team is out there, except for maybe a few players that are still recovering from injury. So there's some things to talk about. And, of course, it's cool to see some of these guys in the Falcons uniforms for the first time. And before we get too far, I want to let the patrons know, or anyone that would like to become a patron, that our next Q&A is going to be Friday, I believe, at 6 p.m. Eastern. So bring us your biggest and boldest questions. They don't have to be about OTAs. I'm not going to make you guys really, scrape the bottom of the barrel for those takes, but they could be about any topics. But yeah, Friday at 6, so mark your calendars, patrons. Anyone else that would like to join us there, patreon.com/Falcoholic Lives, where you get involved with that. We also, of course, would like to remind people to join up with the community Discord if you haven't done that yet. Lots of good conversation going on there, as always. And look, sometimes you just need people to talk Falcons football with, especially this time of year when there's really very, very little going on. So definitely join us there. Before we get started with tonight's topics, I want to thank our sponsor, betonline.ag, our number one source for all your sports betting needs, including info, stats, news, and scores. You can get the latest odds and lines for this year's NBA playoffs. Remember last weekend I was like, oh, maybe you should, you could bet on the Heat and maybe make a lot of money. Well, if you had listened to my not betting advice, maybe you'd be in line to make a lot of money with the Heat, potentially pulling off a big upset here. But no matter what you do, right, guys, BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season, as they've got you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs, from the aforementioned NBA, MLB, NHL hockey, golf, all the way to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options in your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. So head to that website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, so let's kick it off with the news. We'll lead off with that. We did get a pair of roster moves, a surprising retirement, and a wide receiver signing. That's a name that you'll probably recognize, which you can't say that about every wide receiver the Falcons have brought in this offseason. But we did unfortunately see the retirement of Jared Bernhardt, who of course was one of the training camp darlings and preseason heroes last year, Ritter connecting with Bernhardt, sealed a late preseason win. That's maybe the most fun play of the entire preseason. And Bernhardt defied the odds, going from like a Division II quarterback to an NFL wide receiver, former lacrosse star as well. Did make the roster, only ended up appearing in two games, but did stick around until he ended up on IR late in the season. Unfortunately, decides to hang him up. We don't have any details on that. I don't know if he wants to go back to lacrosse. I mean, I wouldn't blame him. Like if I was, one of the best lacrosse players in the world, or like sort of fringe NFL player trying to fight for my roster spot every week, I might just want to go back to the sport where I'm like the best, me personally. Like that's why I ski, right? Because that's why I don't try to play NFL football. That's why I ski, because I know my place. I just talk about football, right?
That NFL minimum contract is worth like 10 years of being a star lacrosse player.
I mean, you're not wrong, Adnan. But on that note, Adnan, as we bid a fond farewell to Jared Bernhardt, what do you think about that retirement? And did you think he actually had a shot at making the roster once again this year?
I wish this had been announced before last week's show, because I went on a whole talk about how Jared Bernhardt probably had a bit of a leg up in the wide receiver competition over some of the newer guys that will be in training camp, because he's familiar with the playbook. He has that chemistry with Desmond Ritter. He probably caught a lot of passes from Ritter in practice last year before he was injured. So I definitely think that I was definitely shocked when it happened, and I definitely do think that he would have had a really solid chance of making the roster again, but he ended up deciding that he didn't want to give it that attempt. I think it's a hell of a story, no matter what, to go from a Towертanian winner, I think that's what it's called, for like the best lacrosse player in college, to playing. I think he only had like a year of football experience beyond the high school level, and to make an NFL roster, that's really impressive, and it shows just what kind of an athlete he is. Best of luck to him moving forward. But we the team did get a replacement that we will talk about later on in the show. But it was definitely surprising to me. I'm disappointed that I don't get to watch Jared Bernhardt in training camp this year. I was going to keep a close eye on him. He is one of the favorites. I wrote like a really, a bit of an in-depth-ish article on him last year, talking about his journey, which was really cool. But at the end of the day, nobody will ever be able to take away the fact that he made it, like he had, at least for 1 year, made it in the NFL after nobody in their right mind thought that he would at this time last year. So that's very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a big accomplishment for him, obviously, to make it. I got to meet some of Bernhardt's family at camp, and they were very complimentary of us talking about him. But I mean, it wasn't like we went out of our way to do it. He made the plays at training camp. He made it easy. He made it easy to talk about him. So definitely best of luck to him wherever he goes. Eric, wanted to get your take there as well. I think you were also fairly high on Bernhardt after his making the roster as a guy who really hadn't played anything above Division II. Not really played much receiver either. It was impressive. So what do you think about Bernhardt deciding to hang him up here?
I think a lot of people take for granted how hard it is to make an NFL roster. And for him to literally come off of one field and enter another one and make the roster in one preseason is very impressive. And that's a feather that's going to be in his cap forever. I'm assuming at this point I guess the football workload and what comes with it was a little too much for him to keep up with and maintain, and that's fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, what he did last year was something that a lot of people would love to have the opportunity to do, and he accomplished that. So, best wishes to him in his future endeavors. But Jared Bernhardt was given an opportunity and he took it and he ran away with it. And it got to a point, honestly, where we thought at one point in time, he may actually be a mainstay because of just what was being said about him, what we saw for him in preseason, and what we know that this team looks for in wide receivers that are at that position of the depth chart. You know, he definitely was able to provide special teams value, and we figured like, okay, he may actually be someone that's, you know, he may be a Falcon for a little bit. We'll see. So best wishes to him, but much respect for what he was able to accomplish last year.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree, you know, it was very impressive, and he was a fun player to watch. It seemed like the instant chemistry he showed with Desmond Ridder maybe would have given him a leg up again this year, but hey, can't blame the guy for going out on a high note, making our NFL roster. I mean, getting still 1 year of full NFL contract. I mean, that's nothing to shake a stick at either. So
there's guys who spend their entire lives training for this that don't make it as far as he did. Like, how many guys don't like get cut, don't make an NFL roster? Like that. That's insanely impressive.
Right.
So very impressive, and best of luck to you, Jared, in your next line of work, whatever that may be. I'm sure you'll crush it. Yeah. So before we get to the signing, wanted to read off our first donation tonight from Corey with the $5. Thank you so much, Corey, man. Really appreciate that. He says, I wanted to be the first to donate to the Falcoholic Training Camp Fund. Yes, thank you for noticing, Corey. He says we need to average exactly $8.82 a day to get us there. Also, was afraid Bernhardt was never going to make it. I'm going to now go with Slade Bolden making it instead of Bernhardt. So that's an interesting take there. We'll get to that as well. But thank you, Corey. Like, yes, as Corey said, thank you for reminding me. The training camp fund officially kicks off today. So if you're interested in helping support our coverage, get me down there. Maybe take, you know, on an eye out.
I'm not quite certain that Slade would have even beaten him out.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I mean, Jared at least has an entire year in the system, so that is a major leg up right there. Like, special teams value is one thing, but he has an entire year in that playbook. So I don't know if that was a guarantee. Honestly.
No, I had Bernhardt penciled in as the fifth guy.
I had him penciled as the sixth. I figured they were going to keep six receivers, and I thought he would have been the last one.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely think he would have had an advantage, but moving forward, unfortunately, Bernhardt no longer in the picture. We do now enter a guy you probably heard of if you followed the draft at all, wide receiver J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who was a second-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles during their period where they couldn't seem to hit on any of their receivers. Now it seems like they've hit on every receiver they've added, but Arcega-Whiteside didn't quite live up to his college production. He did, however, you know, come in with great size, right? 6'2", 225 plus, you know, physical guy, really good run blocker. So, hey, that's going to help him on the Falcons. 75.4 run block grade, and special teams also at over a 70 grade. So he's a good special teamer and a good run blocker. What we don't know is, has he improved as a pass catcher? The Falcons did list him as a receiver. I know the Eagles and the Seahawks had dabbled with maybe converting him to tight end. So it seems like the Falcons, at least for now, see him as a receiver. But Eric, I'll give you the first crack at this. I mean, it's certainly an interesting name. Obviously hasn't lived up to the draft capital invested at this point, but the Falcons are basically signing him for nothing. So what do you think about Arcega-Whiteside's opportunity here? And looks like, I mean, it's pretty much wide open, honestly. So,
I mean, you know, you got to wonder a little bit, with the signing of Bolden and Penny Hart and JJ Arcega-Whiteside, what's the theme here? Is the theme, are they looking for special teams value? Are they actually looking for guys that can actually make some significant contribution to the offense? Like, what's the theme here? Because those three guys are three completely different receivers in my eyes. So when it comes to Arcega-Whiteside, man, I can understand the intrigue. You say that PFF graded him at what in special
75 run block grade, 72 or 71.8 special teams grade. in 2021, which is the last year he qualified for grades because he played enough snaps or whatever. But so, those are good grades in those areas.
I mean, they're good enough to make the roster. But it's hard to gauge him as a player overall because I don't know where his receiving acumen is right now. Like I don't know what type of a receiver he is. Sure, he may be able to provide special teams value. However, I feel like if Bolden and Hart can provide the same thing, I think that may give them more of an advantage because of their ability as receivers. I just don't know where he is as a receiver. I don't know if he's stuck in this weird transition from receiver to tight end. Because if he is, I don't like his chances. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But
no,
we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I'll say this. I know they looked at his size that first day of his tryout and they were like, "Oh, yes."
I like that.
Like he probably didn't really have to do a whole lot. He just walked onto the field, and Arthur Smith was like, "Oh my god, like yes."
That's what Arthur Smith has in mind. Yeah.
Probably the Eagles did too when they drafted him in the second round.
A little too much of that. Yeah.
I mean, okay, well, let me ask you guys this. Coming out of college, coming out of Stanford, did you guys feel that was validated enough for him to be a second round pick? Like, did you guys think he was a day 2 prospect coming out?
I don't think he should have gone before Metcalf.
No, definitely not.
At that point.
I think I had him graded as a day 2 player. I don't remember what my exact ranking was, but I definitely had him behind Metcalf, and I can't even remember. That class feels like so long ago now. It's crazy.
The receivers that went right after him, Andy Isabella hasn't really done anything. Metcalf, Deontay Johnson made a Pro Bowl with the Steelers. You had Terry McLaurin.
Yep. I definitely had McLaurin over him. Yeah.
Jalen Hurd. But yeah, definitely McLaurin and Metcalf really like made that look like sort of a foolish selection in hindsight.
Yeah. Well,
you know what? I think him being at the NFL level would have been fine if it wasn't for the fact that when he got drafted by Phil, like they needed receiver help.
Yeah.
And they needed him to develop quicker than expected.
Yep.
And I don't think he was ready for that.
No.
I think it would have been a better situation for him to be taken on like day 3, and it's like, hey, we're going to gradually get this, a 2-year experiment where you can actually become an NFL receiver, and not like there was expectation from him in year 1.
And it doesn't help. It doesn't help going to play for that terrible ass fan base either in Philadelphia.
Right.
The second that you're like even slightly like not playing up to standards, they really like come after you.
Right.
Like,
even if you still got a level of development that you have to hit, like it's Philly. So
it's super impatient.
Yeah. And and then they follow that pick up with Jalen Reagor the next year, so that the Eagles had that little run of just missing receivers.
That was the Galaxy. That was the Galaxy where they took.
You mean to tell me they could have had DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson in back.
They could have. That would make the Eagles so terrifying right now. Oh my god.
Oh god.
Then they would have kept their pick that they took AJ, or that they traded for AJ Brown.
Yep.
And they could have enhanced the roster even more. I mean, like they're doing just fine.
They're doing just fine. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, they were smart, right? They made the move for AJ Brown that they needed to.
Right now, in hindsight, yeah. But there was a point in time where, like you mentioned earlier, Kevin, like they're struggling to get quality receivers, and this was an example. It was during this period here where they went from Arcega-Whiteside to Reagor, and neither one of them worked out. So
yeah, it's bad. I don't know if it's bad scouting or bad luck, because they're two completely different types of receiver too. So
completely different.
Yeah.
And the thing is, even though their receivers are fine now, like they have a really terrifying core with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. It's the opportunity cost of if they hit on those 2 wide receiver selections, they could have used those first rounders on other positions in the years to come, which I would say that Jefferson and Metcalf would be, the best wide receiver duo in the league, by a pretty fair margin.
By far.
And yeah, they could have that defense could have been even scarier, that O-line or whatever.
Yeah.
And what year was that? Was
2020 was
Whiteside.
Arcega-Whiteside was 2019 and Rager was 2020. So, yeah.
That was what, two years after they won the Super Bowl?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah, because they won the Super Bowl the year after we got.
Year after us, yeah.
Yeah, after
Which was,
Keanu Neal
they might have
knee punted.
they might have had another ring by now, honestly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I know they're doing fine at receiver now, but if you're talking about having Metcalf and Jefferson for what would be 3 years now, 2 or 3 years now, they might have another ring at this point. They might actually beat the Chiefs last year. Just saying. Not saying that they're like you said, Adnan, they're doing fine.
They're doing just fine. But yeah, on the
you can't really poke any holes at the Eagles right now.
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah, no. We're not really in the business of doing that at this point. But
you can't.
Yeah. But what do you think about Arcega-Whiteside now that he's here, Adnan? Or you think he's got a shot? I mean, obviously he has a shot, but what do you think about his chances? Yeah.
It's so the difference for him when we just talked through all of the pressure he was at in Philadelphia, with that heinously terrible fan base and with that with the expectations on him given their weakness on the depth chart. Here in Atlanta, it's the complete opposite. Sure, he's having to fight and claw for his roster spot, but you bring him in for essentially nothing as a May signing. The expectations are completely low. He can just come in and play, which I think is something he has not been able to do in Philadelphia thus far. If he does make it, he will make it as a special teamer. But he definitely has, some intrigue. He has the size that you guys talked about. He's 6'2", 225 pounds coming out of college.
I think he's close to 240 now.
Yeah, he bulked up. I think he bulked up at some point to play tight end.
And it's not bad.
Closer to, yeah. No, I think he was 237 at rookie minicamp. Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah, it's not bad weight. He hasn't gotten fat.
No,
it's not that Kelvin Benjamin weight.
No,
that offensive tackle built there with Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah. No, he's a solidly built dude.
Yeah, and this is a guy that former basketball player. He knows how to post guys up. He caught 14 touchdowns. In his last year in college at Stanford. That's not nothing. He went for over 1,000 yards. That's a lot actually.
Yeah.
So I think, given his NFL experience, he's in his prime, he's 26 years old, given the fact that he is a plus special teamer and a plus blocker, and he has that size that Arthur Smith absolutely, craves, I think he is probably one of the favorites to make the roster. And at the very least, if he does make the roster, I can see them putting in some red zone packages for him, at the very least from a wide receiver perspective, because this is a team of giants at this point in Atlanta. You have Kyle Pitts, you have Drake London, Whiteside is possibly one of those guys that can get to that. Matt Collins isn't a small guy.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's an intriguing prospect, and but you never know. I remember sitting here at this point a year ago thinking that Auden Tate was going to be probably one of the.
I'll never forget the first 2 days of Auden Tate for that training camp. Where he had 3 awesome catches in the first 2 days of training camp, and then
we were all on Auden Tate.
Then it was all over.
Man, this guy be a number 2 wide receiver on this team. Didn't even make it to the last preseason game.
No, man. It was... See, guys, we're not always right, so please don't think that we are.
No, we're not.
We're not.
No.
So we're just doing the best we
thought
can.
that was the signing of the century, honestly.
Oh yeah, we were hyped.
Man, Smith and Terry, they're so much smarter than everyone else.
They're cooking out there. Yeah, let them cook. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. I think with the pressure off of him, if I'm sitting here on May 24th, I would say, yeah, I would probably pencil him in my May projections as a guy on the 53 man right now. But that means absolutely nothing because, we could be here a year from now saying, oh, remember how we thought JJ Arcega-Whiteside was going to be the guy for this team, and he didn't end up making it. So you never know. This is just us speculating because it's May and we have nothing else to talk about. I mean,
do we know for sure if he's strictly going to be a wide receiver?
I
don't think we know.
Assume so. I would assume so. Like
because my thing is this: if he's making last year he was with Seattle, or his last season with Seattle, he was kind of sort of in the middle of that transition. I'm wondering if they're looking at this as if like, okay, you know what, let's continue this transition to tight end, and he replaces Miko.
Yeah, I mean they haven't brought Miko back yet. So.
Right. I wonder that may be the route that they're going with this, because if it is, then I might be a little bit more intrigued than I was before.
Yeah, because they listed him as a wide receiver when they signed him. That doesn't necessarily mean much, but the Falcons do certainly have that propensity for keeping the big receivers. Right. But you have to think like Drake London and Matt Collins. They may keep 5, they may keep 6. Last year they mostly kept 5, but it just depends probably on how they want to do the depth chart and special teams and that sort of thing. If they keep with London and Matt Collins there, do they want another big receiver for the final one? And Kadarius Hodge has some pretty good size too. I think he's like 6'2". So it's just like that's the question. Like, do they want another bigger guy or do they want another smaller guy? Because right now, you've got Scotty Miller as sort of your deep threat, Damiere Byrd replacement, but for that final spot, do they want more of that Penny Hart, Frank Darby, 5'10" to 6 foot sort of smaller, shiftier guy, or do they want more of the, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Josh Ali, Justin Marshall, bigger guy? Because they got, there's 2 different groups of receivers sort of that we have, with like I said, Scotty Miller and Penny Hart and Xavier Malone and Keelan Harris and Frank Darby and Slade Bolden. And then you've got like the big guys with like Justin Marshall and JJ Arcega-Whiteside and Josh Ali. So it's like, I don't know what direction they're going to go. If they keep 6, they're probably going to keep 1 from each of those groups. Like they'll probably keep 1 bigger guy and 1 smaller guy. But if they only keep 5, then it sort of makes it more interesting. But I think practice squad at worst certainly is, I think, what a lot of these guys are competing for, because you have to think they're going to keep at least 1 of these bigger wide receivers as their like top practice squad backup type guy too. So
because my thing is this: if he's also going to transition to tight end, what's the point of having Felipe Franks on?
You can't stop Felipe Franks. Okay, you can only hope to contain him.
Yes, we can. All right. And if this is the way that they want to go with it, then I'm okay with it. I'm fine. All right. Yeah. Let's turn Arcega-Whiteside into a tight end and let's get Franks off my roster. Just saying. I mean, if this is the route that they're going, I'm okay with it.
No, Felipe Franks isn't going anywhere. Nice try.
Yes. No, it's impossible. We can't. We're trapped in here. We're trapped in here with him.
So you guys want the 2023 season to not happen at all?
I'm not saying that I want or don't want anything. I'm saying that Felipe Franks has, more of a lock on that roster spot than Kyle Pitts at this point.
He's like the Thanos of this roster. He's inevitable.
I swear to God, I may be down in the area around week 1, and if I am, we won't have a game. We won't have a season.
Yep.
I'm putting that out there. If he makes my final roster, we're gonna have a real problem.
I will say though, that new quarterback rule that lets you have the third quarterback, as an emergency option. I think that sort of takes away some of that Felipe value.
It does,
because Felipe Franks was like, he's your tight end.
Yep.
Who is activated every game. He's not even listed as inactive. They dress him. And he was always that like emergency quarterback, which now that's not really needed.
Yeah.
But it's even better than having 3 quarterbacks, having 4.
There you go. Because then you're even safer No,
Yes.
a lot of people ask me about that, funny enough. And folks, the rule is, okay, from how I understand it.
What the hell is wrong with you guys?
Look, just let me have this, okay? No,
Look,
so technically, Felipe.
Go
ahead. Yeah.
I have never seen Arthur Smith happier than when I asked him a Felipe Franks question in training camp.
He was
I've never
happy
seen
with
that
the
man
moment we
smile.
drafted Bijan. He was hysterical.
No one. You always remember your first.
He was
project,
even happier.
Aaron.
He was even happier when I asked about Felipe Franks.
No, you always remember your first project, Eric. Right? So nothing that will ever replace Felipe Franks for Arthur Smith. But no, so Felipe Franks is listed as a tight end. So he can't be the third quarterback unless they change him to quarterback, in which case he could. But then he would only be able to play if there were quarterback injuries. So
Right. So if that's the case,
it doesn't
switch Arcega-Whiteside to tight end. Let them battle it out. But
what
let Arcega-Whiteside win.
What if your third quarterback also gets hurt?
Well, then you need. Then we just give it to Bijan.
We have
direct
Bijan,
snap.
guys.
Yeah, just give it to Bijan direct snap at that point, right?
Yes, that's all we need to do.
But
anything but Felipe.
That's why we signed Mohamed Sanu back, so he can be the emergency quarterback. Yeah.
And Mohamed Sanu has been really like advocating, and he's been pushing it on Twitter, like, "Hey guys, are you sure you guys don't want me back?
You guys sure? You guys
what
absolutely."
are we doing, guys?
So he'll only be 34 this year. Okay, so like
only
unless the Patriots are giving us another second rounder for him.
Maybe we can flip him again. I mean, that was pretty genius, right? So.
Then we wasted that pick on Hayden Hurst.
Yeah. No, so the third quarterback will probably actually hurts Felipe's chances of making the roster more than it would help him. And it probably means that the Falcons are going to keep that third quarterback on the roster, where in years past they frequently didn't, just because you get to activate that extra player. So I think a lot of teams will pivot to having that available and having an actual third quarterback instead of prioritizing having some kind of emergency quarterback option. We'll see how that plays out, but that's sort of my thoughts on what that'll be. Yeah, and we do have Troy Anderson as well. He played quarterback for
there you go. Boom.
Yeah, so
let's do it. Yep. Anything but Franks.
But is he a former 4 or 5 star prospect from high school?
I don't think so. Yeah,
wasn't he Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year or something like that?
Yes, multiple times. Once as quarterback and once as a running back. Yeah. And then he was all FCS linebacker also, Troy Anderson.
Yeah, it was Defensive Player of the Year or something
but he didn't go through the grind of an FCC schedule.
That's right. You just can't replace that rigor. You can't replace the rigor of an SEC season in terms of,
There's no rigor. Okay, guys. All right.
This is all a bit. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to OTAs. I did promise we'd talk about OTAs at least a little bit. There were some things, right, that we saw. So first of all, injury updates. Kyle Pitts, Taquan Graham, and Caleb Huntley were not actively practicing. They were, I believe, out there, but they weren't wearing helmets. They were sort of still rehabbing. And then both Jesse Bates and Cordell Patterson were not in attendance. Jesse Bates apparently had an excused absence. I mean, these aren't mandatory, but I guess Bates, they specifically said he was welcoming in his new baby. So congrats to Jesse Bates on that one.
Brand new Falcons fan.
Yep, there we go. So nothing there was surprising. All three of those guys. Caleb Huntley, I don't think we're going to see at all. Until maybe partway through the season. So I would not be surprised if we don't see him much at all. But I think Kyle Pitts and Taquan Graham we'll see by the start of training camp at the latest. Those guys could be back as early as mandatory mini camp in a few more weeks, but we'll see. Next interesting bit to talk about, Avery Williams, the original positionless player, right? First was a DB, then a running back, and apparently now a receiver. I guess one of the tidbits from this week was that Avery Williams working with the receivers through the early OTA sessions. So what do you guys think about Avery Williams adding just another position to his repertoire?
I will say, if I I would hate Avery Williams if he was being transitioned into my position group, if I was one of those fringe guys.
Yeah.
Because Avery Williams has a lock on one of those roster spots because he's a hell of a returner. And, imagine being one of those like guys who's fighting tooth and nail for that spot. And it's like, oh, there's one less of these available now because we're just going to put Avery Williams over here. But, I mean, it adds value. And, Avery Williams, I talked to him at camp last year and I asked him about that transition. And he said that was all the coaches. Like, they came to him. They pitched him the idea of moving from DB to running back. And, he, without hesitation, grasped at that opportunity. He took that challenge. And if he's switching positions again, I'm not saying he will or won't, but, he definitely seems like the type of guy who will, answer whatever challenge the coaches give to him. And this could be one of those cases. But Avery Williams, no matter what position he is, that's just one of those depth-like pieces. His value is in his great punt returning, which, I mean, I've said it in shows past. He's the best returner that we've had since Eric Weems 1.0 in like 2010.
Yeah. Devin Hester, maybe, but like
Hester was fine.
I mean, he was obviously more of a kick return specialist, but yeah.
Look, it's going to be an unpopular opinion. I think as a Falcon, he was a little bit overrated.
I still thought his kick returns were really good, but
like,
his punt returns weren't, they weren't vintage Hester. Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's just he's talked about so much as like, for that like return, which like broke Deion Sanders' record, and rightfully so. But it's like people always bring that up, and I'm over here like, yeah, I mean that was a cool moment, but we won that game by like 40 either way. I think it was only
still
like
nice. Yeah.
It was nice.
No, you're not wrong though. Like I would say Avery Williams so far has been a better punt returner than Hester was for the Falcons.
Could we say the same thing about Cordero as a returner?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, 100%. Like, Cordero doesn't even want to return, like, most of the kicks that come his way.
No, he don't. He doesn't.
Yeah. And and now with these new rule changes, he's probably right. So.
And I think the one he wanted to return last year, the one that he did return was because he fumbled on the previous possession.
Yeah.
So he was kind of sort of like trying to make up for that. So
and he did.
Yeah, he did. Right. I get when it comes to Avery, like, it's the one thing that will, regardless of your ability, regardless of your measurables, the one thing that will keep you in the NFL is versatility. If you're able to do a number of things, somebody will find a spot on a roster for you somehow, some way. And I don't mind him getting this type of OJT at running back and then at receiver now. If especially if they really want him, if they really want to incorporate him into the offensive scheme, and if they do, that's another wrinkle to it. That's another guy on the field, along with Cordero, along with Drake, along with Jonnu, along with Pitts, along with Bijan, that can be wherever you want him to be. So I think for both sides, it works. You're potentially adding a guy to your scheme that you can slot in as a running back or slot in many facets in different places. And for Avery himself, if his career is, his long-term career does not keep him in Atlanta, I promise you other teams will look at this and say, okay, you know what, we can find a spot for him somehow, some way.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that for sure. And I wonder if they're just trying to make him like their back end of the roster backup as many places as they can. It's like, look, Avery, you're gonna be.
I think so. Yeah,
you're gonna be like our fourth running back, our like sixth receiver, and like our like extra cornerback DB in case we have a catastrophe, which did happen once last year, actually. Yeah,
and our punt returner and backup kick returner, like you.
Yeah.
And especially for a guy his size, he doesn't have prototypical NFL size. So the next best thing for him is to show that he's able to play various positions, because he doesn't have he doesn't have the favorable measures that, like Arcega-Whiteside does. The fact that the guy is 6'2", 240, that almost is going to get him on a number of rosters. Avery doesn't have that. Yeah. But in his back pocket, he can show, I can kick return, I can punt return, I can play running back, I can play receiver, I can play slot corner, I can do whatever. Yeah. Somebody will find a spot.
Yeah, it helps for sure. And his roster spot already wasn't in jeopardy, and I wonder if that's why they're trying to cross-train him as many places as possible. Because it's like, okay, Avery, you're making the roster, you're going to be our returner, but let's cross-train you as many places as we can so you can basically be our emergency depth piece, and not just one, like it's, at a lot of different spots, and that way they can afford it'll give them more game day inactive flexibility and 53-man roster flexibility if they know they've got somebody they can count on as at least like a emergency depth piece at a lot of these positions. It could lead to them keeping more like 5 receivers, or maybe keeping 4 running backs, or whatever. Like they have flexibility to do some different, like maybe 5 or 6 corners, or 5 corners instead of 6, because they know he can be their emergency 6th corner or whatever. So
it's super smart. Like, yeah. The best time to plan for a disaster is before you're going through one. And I don't know, that they've been, this regime, I pay them a lot of compliments for considering a lot of stuff that, regular people and even that other regimes don't really consider as much. We talked last week about how many of these, guys in other leagues they have been scouting and signing, the XFL guys, the CFL guys, like, Alford last year was a guy from the CFL, and he stuck. He made the roster. He was one of those preseason gems. Now, last week they signed 2-3 more XFL guys. They're, I don't know. I give them a lot of compliments for leaving no stone unturned in everything. And, this is the sort of preparation that you really need to give yourself a bit of a leg up in the NFL, where, even getting that slight extra bit can be the difference between, a 7-win season and maybe a 9-win season in the playoffs. It's a game of very fine margins.
That type of scouting is what Terry Fontenot built his reputation on. Yeah. Like that, going out to different leagues, to the CFL, going outside of the NFL and looking for guys. That's how he was able to bring in David Onyemata. That's how he was able to find a hidden gem in Akeem Hicks. Like that, I feel like that is not. I feel like that is not really talked about enough outside of Falcon circles when it comes to Terry Fontenot. His ability to scout the pro personnel is something that he's built his reputation on, and it's happened so far. It's worked quite well so far.
Yeah, no, I think it's starting. We're starting to see the payoff, and that the Falcons are getting a lot of really interesting depth pieces. D. Alford is one, and I think we may see him even take on a bigger role this year. We'll see how it plays out, but a bunch of XFL players coming in, some CFL guys, some guys sticking around, and they're constantly sort of churning too. Like they're like we've seen a lot of minor moves, but rookie minicamp, they swapped 14 players around after they saw some new guys. So it's like, they're not content either. Just like, they're not just like, oh, well, we got these guys, let's see how they look in camp. It's like, no, we think these guys we had at minicamp are better than what we had. So let's swap them out. Let's see what we got.
Something that the previous regime didn't want to do.
Yeah. Well,
or the regime before that one. I mean, that's technically like off-season question. Are we counting it as one regime, the Thomas Dimitroff one, or is it Dimitroff and Smith is one, and then Dimitroff and Green is one?
That's 2 different ones. I would count that as
I'm counting it off coaches.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Mike Smith era, the Dan Quinn era. That's when I say regime, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because I think that's fair.
Because span over both, but
that's
the level of complacency that we saw from both, as you mentioned, Adnan, that we saw from both Mike Smith and Dan Quinn, it was hard to ignore, and it got the team in trouble a number of occasions. And you don't see it from this regime now. They're not complacent. They're constantly bringing in guys. I mean, the fact that they signed Slade Bolden, Penny Hart, and Arcega-Whiteside in a matter of 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Like, damn, for one spot? pretty much from one or
They
two
keep
spots.
ratcheting
maybe.
it
Like,
up. Yeah, they keep ratcheting up that
that's
competition.
yeah.
So
I'm okay with that.
I'm not saying that, I'm not saying anyone's on the hot seat or anything, but doesn't it feel like these guys are working as if like, they're on the hot seat? Like, they're
Absolutely.
really,
Absolutely.
they're just like, and that's what you want. Like that's
Right.
why the Patriots were so successful. Like Bill Belichick was going out and doing shit that like, where it seemed like, he was doing this desperate stuff that's like on the hot seat, which was giving his team a leg up, even though Bill Belichick has the best job security in NFL history.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know, that's what you want to see. Like that's what you want to see from your guys, where you use the word complacency. Like you do not want to see your regimes be complacent. You want them to be, it's May and they're over here watching XFL games and seeing, they're doing stuff that other guys aren't doing. And that can be the difference. That can be the difference between having, that really good, that really solid depth, because, we remember in the Mike Smith era, there was no depth like at all on the team. Like, that team was so top heavy. The end of the Dan Quinn regime, that team was so top heavy to the point where you had 4 guys taking up like 30-something% of your salary cap.
Yeah,
it's crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah. So I did want to get to a couple things before we move on with the OTA stuff. So first of all, got a couple donations. First of all, Hal, I believe that's Hal Snipes, in the YouTube chat with the $20 training camp donation. He says, "Let's get Kevin to camp." Hal, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate that. And then we got George with the $5 saying, "What if we won the Super Bowl and it was all because Felipe Franks was our Nick Foles? Does one game the greatest Falcons quarterback make?" Would you change your tune on Franks if he won the Falcons a Super Bowl with some kind of Philly special play, Eric? Would that be enough?
That has to be enough. Come on. That has to be enough. What?
Yeah, no one's that big a hater. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. He had to think about it though.
What would make someone even form a question like that?
Because George wants to mess with you. Yeah.
We were discussing that last week. We were discussing that possibility last week of, is Arthur Smith keeping Felipe Franks year in and year out just for one play, for him to dial up one surprise package play, and for it to all be worth it in the end.
Yep. I mean, hey, I don't care how it gets done. If they win a Super Bowl, Felipe Franks, if he has to be the one to do it, I will accept that.
They just throw him a lateral
happily,
and he just throws one on a rope to Kyle Pitts downfield.
Yeah,
and that's you end up winning by like 4 points.
Yeah, but I did also want to touch on a lot of people were asking about it. It did break recently that Falcons fullback Keith Smith was arrested on a traffic charge. We did get a little bit more information just now from Ian Rappaport as well. So basically what happened was Smith got a speeding ticket a few months ago. He informed the team. He paid the ticket, thought it was all good. Apparently something was not checked off correctly. Anyone that knows the DMV and that sort of stuff knows that that's pretty easy to do. Apparently something happened and his license got suspended as a result. And then when he got pulled over today for, I think, an expired registration or something, because the license was suspended, they arrested him for that. So it's not a DUI or anything crazy. This is not going to affect his availability for the Falcons. It's probably something that's going to get cleared up, maybe even before court. So I wouldn't worry or waste too much time with this. It's not really much of anything. I mean, Alvin Kamara's on tape beating up somebody, and he's still playing for the Saints. So, so I'm just saying, it's not something that's probably going to affect his availability for the team in training camp or even OTAs or anything like that. So, yeah. So not much there, but I did want to. I know a lot of people are asking.
He just has to get rides to practice. That's all it is.
Yeah, needs to get get your license updated. Update that registration, Keith Smith. All right.
Moral of the story: check your registration and
check your registration. Yep, that's the moral of the story. We can all learn from it.
Yeah. Try to follow the speed limit. As best as you can.
Also, yeah. All right. Next up. offensive line position stuff. The left guard competition. First peek here. It is currently Matt Hennessy at first team left guard. Not really surprising, especially considering it's OTAs. And Matthew Bergeron is the second team left guard. And apparently Jalen Mayfield is currently the second team right guard. And Kyle Hinton, I guess, is also working with the first two units, rotating in at the guard spots as well. So it seems like those guys are sort of the early contenders. Matt Hennessy, Matthew Bergeron, and Kyle Hinton, sort of the early contenders for left guard. And then it's confirmed from these OTAs that Jovan Gwynn, Falcons 7th round pick, was a college guard. A lot of speculation that he might switch to center given his size limitations. He has switched to center. The Falcons are playing him pretty much exclusively at center, getting him cross-trained and set to play there. So that is another interesting development there, that he's officially going to be playing center. Any thoughts on the early? I mean, we haven't actually seen anything to judge the battles, but any of these things surprising you guys at this point in terms of who's near the top of these depth charts early on?
Not really. I guess sliding Mayfield over to right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Mildly interesting.
Let's use that word. I'm not sure it's going to work, guys. I'll be honest with you.
He wasn't on my roster.
You mean he's not going to beat out Chris Lindstrom?
Yeah, I think
definitely.
Unfortunately for him, yeah. That would be pretty terrifying to go from Chris Lindstrom to Jalen Mayfield.
Even sure if he's going to be Lindstrom's backup. I'm not even sure he's good enough to be that.
Yeah.
He never played left guard. He struggled there. We're going to put him at right guard, which he's never played. Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah, like really struggling your first year and then missing your entire second year. That's just a really tough scenario to come back from. And the Falcons obviously have brought in a lot of competition too. So there's no guarantee that he makes it. Right now, I would not expect him to make the roster. I think practice squad is still very much in play for him, but we'll see. I think Kyle Hinton may have surpassed him already.
I feel like he's at a point right now where practice squad is not even really
not guaranteed. Yeah, it's not guaranteed.
Like you haven't seen anything from him in over a year?
Yeah.
The last thing you saw from him wasn't good.
Right.
I was trying not to bury him for that training camp practice either. Yeah, but it was not good.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that either, but I'm saying like you have to, there's no availability from him. You haven't seen anything. He's been shelved. And then now you're seeing him at a different position, which even if he would have stayed at left guard, he would have had to show his butt off this preseason just to make the roster there.
It's tough.
It's tough. So
yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm not holding out much hope there, to be honest with you.
No,
I am just waiting for someone to lose their mind over Bergeron not being the starting left guard on the May depth
already. Yeah,
because
I'm sure somebody already has. We just haven't seen it yet.
Oh, the Falcons drafted a bust. You can't.
Yeah, he's a bust.
He's not starting in OTAs. He didn't start. He didn't get to start in OTAs. He must be a bust.
This team looks at Drake London as like the 5th string wide receiver until like the 3rd preseason game last year.
Yep, it was pretty funny too.
They'll do that.
Yeah.
They did.
I'm guessing Gallman is like far and away the favorite to win that.
Yeah, it seems like it.
I'm sure there will be some competition with Hennessy involved, but it does show you sort of a little bit their mentality that if Hennessy isn't starting at either center or left guard, he's going to be that swing guard for you, which it's not the worst option.
I think
swing
it's a good spot for him.
Yeah.
Is it still a little surprising to you guys that they didn't really make any moves?
I've been shouting Ben Jones's name from the rooftops for months, and nobody's listening to me. So maybe maybe in training camp, like it just makes too much sense. Like it just makes so much sense for this to happen, for us to have no word from it, unless Jones just like, privately is retiring. And
Yeah. And not only him, but Nate Davis as well.
Yeah.
Like those two guys were, I figured once they were available, that they're clearly on the radar, and apparently not. Okay.
I don't know if they want to start. Yeah, if they want to start, I think it's going to be, they're not necessarily guaranteed that here. So I wonder if they're waiting for something more promising. But
you don't think they would have been guaranteed even before the draft? Like I feel like
yes,
I feel like Davis would have been left guard starter day one.
Oh yeah, if they had signed him. I think the fact that they didn't sign him means that they were wanting to get a young, cheap left guard. So that's I assume that's why they haven't done it. But I mean, I think they probably have at least talked to them. I would be surprised if they hadn't had conversations with them. But if I was those guys, I wouldn't be rushing to sign somewhere that I wasn't going to be the starter at this point. They're both veterans. They don't. Yeah.
But I mean, Jones would start at center here. Like I don't see Dahlman beating him out for that starting center job.
Nope.
Yeah. I mean, it seems unlikely. So maybe they just don't want to pay. I mean, I assume he wants, or maybe he's just considering retirement, honestly. But it's kind of hard to say. But
I would think at the very least, like you mentioned, conversations were had.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they haven't. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah. I think they really like Dahlman. I think they want that to work. So it seems like they're going to at least give him a chance, but you have to think if it's looking sketchy that they'll probably make some sort of move. So, all right. Last significant topic, significant in quotes. So Mike Hughes officially playing in the slot. That was what he said at his press conference, that he was going to play the slot. It seems like that's confirmed. And then the first man up with Jesse Bates out was actually Micah Abernathy at safety, who was one of their futures contract guys. I'm not super familiar with him, but I thought that was noteworthy because he was not really on my radar at all. And apparently also Trey Flowers looked good, looked huge, which that's kind of what he does. He's giant corner. So, yeah, what do you guys think about, Micah Abernathy potentially, Trey Flowers? That safety depth competition is really wide open. Like after you get past Bates, Grant, and Hawkins, it could really be anyone. Obviously I think DeMarco Helms has a little bit of an advantage being a draft pick, but other than that, a lot of guys there potentially fighting for spots.
What does this say for Jalen Hawkins?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, why? Yeah. Like, Hawkins was there, right? Like, he wasn't excused, or?
I guess I don't know. I don't know enough about that, but yeah.
That's not good.
Like, there's only so much you can evaluate from May OTAs, but I mean,
if he was there and was not the primary back,
something like that you can't evaluate.
Yeah.
The fact that bodies were there, and when it came to practicing, who got more reps than who in certain spots?
Because normally, like you get it with the Bergeron thing, right? Like that they're gonna give preference to the veterans, but Hawkins is the veteran. So
Hawkins is the veteran, right?
Yeah, so it's like, that's really weird. Like that's the first place my mind went to right there when you said that it's Abernathy.
Yeah, I'm sure Jalen was like, "Oh, really? Oh, okay." That doesn't bode well for Jalen. Now we'll see how OTAs play itself out. We'll see how training camp plays itself out. It's still early.
Yeah.
But that, to me, that does stand out enough.
Yeah, that's noteworthy.
You bring it up. Abernathy came in from where?
He was a futures contract guy. I think he finished the end of last season on the practice squad, or maybe even the roster, as one of their like depth guys. I don't think he actually played. I think he was active for like a handful of games at the end of the year.
And I think he only played like one snap. And he got early OTA reps over a 2-year starter.
Potentially. I wasn't there, so I don't know the exact details, but that was the observation was that Abernathy was getting some snaps. So, yeah.
So also they gave him Deion Jones's old number. So, that's not noteworthy, but 45.
Hey. It's worth looking
I don't know, man. I think that again, there's a lot to still occur as the offseason continues, but I do find that a little significant. You got a guy that's going to start. And it's not me saying that they made the wrong decision. It's just me looking at it and saying, okay, well, they felt that comfortable with Abernathy that they decided to give him more reps.
In fairness, he has made a 53-man before.
He has.
He was on the Packers. He was on the Packers last year, so he's not brand new. He's not like a UDFA now, like just getting reps. Yeah. But
no, he entered the league in like 2019, I think. So he's been around for a few years on practice squads and rosters. So
yeah. Also, he was in the XFL too. Back in the day, we just talked about that. But I mean, yeah, it's not like, no matter how we cut it, no matter how much I'm trying to sugarcoat it right now, it doesn't look very good for Jalen Hawkins at this moment, but hopefully this will, kind of motivate him to really kick it into high gear this summer, because, maybe he is one of those guys where he thought that his roster spot was secure, and maybe this is a message saying, hey, it might not be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brand new secondary coach, brand new defensive coordinator. So that coaching staff in the secondary in particular has been completely revamped. So I think, there's not going to be a lot of favoritism or, veteran bonus to that group in particular, because it's a new staff entirely. Whereas, like, you look at linebacker, they still got Frank Bush. You look at some of these other spots, some of the coaching staff was retained. But, the secondary, definitely not. And I sort of have felt all along that, like, Falcons have these three rookies, or not rookies, but three guys that are all entered the final year of their rookie deal, in Matt Hennessy, Michael Walker, and Jalen Hawkins. All three of them could save $2.74 million if they're released. I don't think they're all going to get cut. I think one of the three is probably getting cut. That's just been my sort of gut feeling. I always sort of thought Michael Walker was the most likely one, but maybe it isn't Michael Walker. Maybe it's Jalen Hawkins, because it seems like Matt Hennessy, pretty unlikely to be him. He seems like at worst the primary interior backup. So maybe it is Hawkins, which I think would surprise a lot of folks. But if this is a brand new secondary coach, brand new secondary system, maybe they are looking to go in a different direction there. And if Hawkins is your fifth safety, maybe you'd rather save the money elsewhere. So definitely interesting. That was one of the more interesting developments that we heard so far. But again, guys, it's OTAs, right? I mean, we did fill an hour talking about OTAs, so I'm proud of you guys. Off of a single,
without even talking about the quarterback.
Yeah, we didn't even mention. I did that on. Yeah, I was trying to avoid that on purpose because I don't even want to wade into that. But I mean, what do you, now that you brought it up, thank you. I personally don't care what quarterbacks look like in OTAs, because for probably 50% of the guys the quarterbacks are throwing to, this is the first time they've ever thrown to them, like, period. Like, all these UDFAs. Like, one of the passes that Ritter sailed in that video was to Keelan Harris, so I think he's never thrown to before these practices. So, it's really not worth your time to get upset about. I guess if you want to because you're bored, that's fine. But yeah,
no, it's not because you're bored. It's because you want to be a jerk and you want to nitpick. Because your quarterback is not in there. Then this is something you look for. The first bad throw of OTAs. Oh, see, told you he ain't.
He's a bust. He's a bust.
Why didn't we get Lamar?
Right. I can still, and I know you guys can still remember. I still, vividly remember Matt Ryan getting picked off by his OC.
I was just about to mention that. I swear I was
the training camp before his MVP season.
Yep.
But
that was in training camp too. This is OTAs.
Right. This is literally like that was literally weeks before the season. And it was such a big deal that it ended up, getting publicized. And then we sit here. Look, if I could address those individuals real quick, I really don't like those type of people that want to sit here and root for things to go badly for the team simply because a certain player is not on the team. Like you're sitting here and you're rooting against your favorite team simply because Ritter's your starting quarterback. And you want to nitpick every single thing that Ritter does. That is pathetic. Okay? That is completely pathetic. Like, get over it. You're going to be sitting here and you're going to be talking about every little thing that he does. Oh, he didn't stretch right, so he must, like, who gives a shit? Like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Who cares?
Okay. I'm popping the E on this. Adnan already said one. So
you saw two throws.
It must have just slipped up.
You saw two throws. You saw two throws, but you didn't say anything about the throw that he hit London in stride on the slant route yesterday. You didn't say anything about that, right? Like, all right, whatever. Cool.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There's a portion of the fan base that literally did not enjoy anything that this team did for 15 years because Matt Ryan was the quarterback and, it wasn't Michael Vick. So, I mean, I don't know. Every fan base has them. Like, it's just it's a numbers game. It's math. Like, every fan base has millions of fans, and in those millions, there's bound to be a certain percentage that hits on everything. Like
right.
A certain percentage that's just curtains and just pure optimism. Like throughout, there's a certain percentage that's just pure pessimism. There's a certain percentage that roots against them because of their own personal agendas. It's just it's a numbers game.
Yeah, it is. And like you're free to be a fan in whatever way you want, but I personally, I think it's kind of a loser mentality. It's like
absolutely
the die has been cast. Like if you disagree with the move to go with Ritter, like that's fine. Like if you wanted them to go in a different direction at quarterback, that's fine. But the ship has sailed. Like they're not gonna go back on that now. So like you can keep that in the back of your mind, but like if you're just sort of waiting to try to prove yourself right, but like the consequence of you being right is that the team is bad and that like the Falcons' young quarterback is bad. That's a loser mentality. Like, why would you want that?
Absolutely.
Like, I would much rather be wrong and the Falcons be good than be right and the Falcons suck. Like that. I mean, that might because my priorities are.
You're sitting here and you're wasting precious time in life just to look and see if Desmond Ritter makes a bad throw, so you can have your aha moment. Like what?
That's
like nobody cares. Yeah, nobody cares about your aha moment. Also,
go take a walk. Go
touch some grass. Yeah, touch some grass.
It's OTAs, and like you mentioned, Kevin, one of the throws was to a guy that's may not even make the roster, and B, the guy was what 5'9", 5'10".
Yeah. Probably the first time he's thrown to him. Like they've only been out there for
probably
like a
the first time he's thrown to a smaller. Like he's. Yeah. I've been throwing to Drake for 3 days. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was throwing to Mo Sanu in the offseason, So.
My bad.
Yeah,
my bad. I've been
funny.
lofting it up to Jonnu. I've been hitting Jonnu in stride for 2 days. I missed this out route to this guy that I don't even know what his name is. So I must be a bad
practice.
Whatever.
We're talking about practice.
Like it's OTAs. It's OTAs. Oh my God. This is crazy. There's no pads. There's no defenders. Whatever, man.
Yeah,
whatever.
It's ultimately pointless, but we say that and then we spend an hour talking about it. But hey, it is what it is, right? There's nothing else to talk about, so we'll talk about it. But even we just don't take it seriously.
We didn't spend an hour. We didn't spend an hour pointing out mistakes that we saw in a 10-second video. Like, see, you know what? We saw that, so this team must be doomed. Oh my God.
We got to get our like CSI camera out and like zoom in,
right.
And see like, oh look, his footwork was bad on this one throw. Oh look at that. Oh, he came down out of bounds on that one. Yeah.
I noticed yesterday that when Drake caught a bubble screen, he kept the ball in his left hand as he was running down the right sideline.
Bust.
Like, you know what? That tells me everything I need to know about a receiver.
Yep.
What?
First practice at OTAs. You know,
And no wonder he has those fumbling issues. He hasn't fixed them.
Yep.
Exactly. That's like, right. Like, yeah. See, that's why he fumbles.
Yep.
Like, see, whatever. All right, man.
Yeah. No, it's just like, guys, like, try to have fun with this, for God's sake. Like, come on. Like, this is supposed to be fun, not like, you know, if you want to be a hater, that's up to you, I guess. But it just.
But that's the thing that, like, sometimes I think even we forget it. Like, this fan thing is supposed to be enjoyable. Like, we're supposed to have fun doing this. We're supposed to enjoy doing this. I think we do for the most part, like, personally.
We
like,
do, or we try.
Yeah, we do. Like, for 5 years, this shitty team hasn't been above 500 for a single day, and we're still here.
We
like,
still have a good time. Yeah, you know.
yeah.
But that's the thing. That's the thing, Adnan. Largely from the fan base, this offseason has presented so much hope and optimism at this point compared to what this team has been the past 2 or 3 years. And you want to waste that time sitting here talking about something small like that. Like, this team has been put together fairly well this offseason, and there's plenty of hope going into the year.
Yeah.
I can't sit. I don't want to sit here and just waste time and opportunity just to nitpick on whatever bad thing I see in a 10-second video from OTAs. Like, this, whatever.
No,
man.
Look,
I mean, there's going to be plenty of time to be frustrated in the regular season.
Save that energy for when they screw up, actually, when it matters. Like,
we talked about it last week. Like, we have this 3-month period right now. And I mean, you know, no offense to all the people that go crazy over regular season baseball. But it's this 3-month, time period of, sort of decompressing, sort of, preparing yourself for the next few months. That'll be, the NFL regular season where you're stressing out and you're like all of this and that. But, for the next 3 months, just like, just go watch a movie, have, go get some ice cream. It's beautiful weather right now.
I saw this kid in his second game loft a corner route over 3 defenders to Drake for a first down against the Ravens, against Marlon Humphrey and that secondary. In his third game, I saw him squeeze a short hook to Miko with the game on the line in between 2 defenders to get a first down, keep the ball, keep the clock running, and preserve a win. And you mean to tell me you want to point out a throw in OTAs to a receiver that may not make the team? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it's just
it is what
it is. Yeah, just try to have fun, guys. No question about it. I'm ready to get hurt again. So no question.
But in a few months,
I'm not.
Yeah, in a few months.
This is not going to be the year. This is not going to be. This is. I'm telling you, man. This is the
There's
year.
also the sad. No, you're right. I mean, I think we're going to enjoy this season. No, but it's like that's the thing, though. Year. Outside of one team, every team is eventually every fan base is sad at the end of the year.
It's not a Super Bowl year. I'm sorry, guys.
So
it's not a Super Bowl.
Yeah, probably not. But
I think we might. I think we might have a little.
Yeah, it could be like winning football year at least. So,
right.
Yeah.
That'll be a huge.
We're going to have fun this
huge step compared to what we've experienced in the past few years.
If we could just win week 1. Get that winning record finally. That would be enough for me, at least to start. Like, can we just get the 1 win? Can we beat the damn Panthers?
All I wanna say is this: I'm already keeping receipts. Okay,
you got them saved.
The moment that this team wins 10 or 11 games and make the playoffs,
I would come for Chris Sims, but I think pretty much everyone already comes for him. Like, I feel like it's not even fun to dunk on Chris Sims.
Colin Cowherd, PFF.
I mean, didn't he have like? I'm trying to remember what was his worst quarterback take. It was like not even. It wasn't even this Chris Sims. Didn't he have like Zach Wilson QB1 over Trevor Lawrence or something like that? Chris Sims. He did something like that. It was.
Well, didn't he say the Chiefs should take Hooker in like the first round this year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
He did.
In case you guys don't know, Chris Sims it's all for show. Like, I don't think it's serious. Yeah.
he also has Desmond Ridder as the 40th ranked
40.
quarterback in the league.
Behind Sam Howell, who threw for 150 yards against the Cowboys.
There's
backups.
32 teams.
Yeah. Yep.
He's got a number of backups.
Yeah.
Again, I'm coming. I
He has Taylor Heineke ahead of Desmond Ridder.
Right, he does. He does. Right.
So hey, fan Taylor Heineke. So yeah.
All right, cool.
Chico legend.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I got my receipts. I'm coming.
Yep. No, it's whatever. But well, guys, we've somehow filled this air magnificently. And you might remember
we are pros at this.
We're big time pros. But for those of you that were paying attention, obviously Brett Jukes not here tonight. He did have a conflict, so we were trying to accommodate him, obviously, as a Falcons executive, very busy man. So he will be on June 7th, so 2 Wednesdays from now. Next Wednesday, we will be off, as I will be celebrating Caroline, my wife's tenure. She just got tenure, so congrats to her. Big shout out. So we're going to be, taking a week off to celebrate that. Next week, and again on Friday, we'll be having our next patron Q&A session. So that will be, I think, 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Got some fun people lined up to tackle that. So if you're a patron or want to get involved with that, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live for all those updates. You can sign up there. Like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the Discord server as well, the link to which is in the show description. Before we take off, though, want to thank tonight's co-hosts. First of all, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, let the people know what you're working on.
Actually, nothing too much recently.
You got some, deep dive, OTA analysis post coming. 1,000 words on Desmond Ridder's bad throws.
Considering the fact that Dave never watches the show, I can freely say no, I don't.
Okay.
But it's if you do want to check out my last deep dive, it's kind of buried on the site, but it's the Falcons running game article. So, for sure check that out. Check out my rest breakdown article, looking at bye weeks, Thursday, Monday games, that extra period of rest each team has. Just check out the Falcoholic.com, where, even in the depths of May, we have new stuff being published, every day pretty much. So definitely check that out, because we are a 365-day-a-year website.
Yeah. No, definitely good stuff. On the Falcoholic always, guys. Keep tuned there for all that. And then we got Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson. He's at ESPN. Eric, anything you'd like to plug before we sign off tonight?
Same as always, man. Plugging the Falcoholic. Excuse me. Public. Excuse me. The Falcoholic. I'll get it out at some point. Yeah. Plugging the Falcoholic, man. One-stop shop for everything. And I know Kevin and Adnan are just out here churning out great content, great material, time and time again. Like you guys say, this is kind of sort of like that dreary part of the off season where you're just trying to find things to write about and talk about. But I guarantee you, man, the Falcoholic will have you guys well aware of what's going on, any and everything Falcons. So check it out.
Absolutely.
I mean, we teased JJ Arcega-Whiteside for like 20 minutes to start the show. If that tells you just what kind of a time period it is.
We gotta make do with what we have, okay? And we're pros, so we're not just gonna give it to you off the top.
We'll talk about that big Falcons signing, in a few minutes here.
Who did the Falcons sign at wide receiver? Stay tuned to find out after these messages.
This former second-round draft pick, who was a scam.
It's not. Yeah.
He had 14 touchdowns in 2019, but not in the NFL. Hey,
he's had one in the NFL.
Yeah, he's had one. He's got the one. He got the dub. That's as many as Kyle Pitts, right?
Much to Kyle Pitts on U.S. soil, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Tonight's show was presented by Bet Online. Again, guys, we will see you on Friday for the patron Q&A. And then we will see you a couple Wednesdays from now as we welcome in Brett Jukes to get into some more off-season discussion. So we will see you then, guys. Thanks again for watching. Thanks to everyone for donating to the training camp fund. We will catch up in not too long. So until then, guys,